Welcome to the Embodied Woman Podcast. I am your co-host, Amber Sousa, along with Siri Baruch Thornton. And today we are beyond thrilled to have Alexandra Cole, human design expert, back for more. You've already, her episode with us was one of the most popular episodes. She did a reading for us. And it was absolutely incredible. And I know that we want to dive today into you and your story, but first I have to tell you that your reading for us has been incredibly instrumental in helping us navigate some really huge growth as individuals and as friends and as partners. Like,
wow.
Really.
Oh, I'm so glad to hear that.
Yeah.
And honestly, it's a testament to you most of all, because I can give that information to people, but it's you both showing up with kind of an open mind and heart and actually being open to seeing each other in that more objective way, right? And taking your egos out of it, that it allows the system to actually like have the impact that it has the potential to. So
Thank
Thank you.
Yeah, we've done some work since we had the reading with you. It was not easy, but it's all great. It's all amazing. Like even when it's uncomfortable and it's hard, but there's so much validation of, oh, this is your blueprint. Like you're okay to be the way you are. And how can we just honor and give each other space? And like we stopped coaching each other. We don't do that anymore. We've just given each other more space. We understand the way the other person operates better. We speak in human design language to each other. I started doing donation-based readings since your session with us. Like I
love it. Oh, that makes me so happy to hear. Wow. And I think
it's
too that
yeah.
it's the accepting each other for who you are. And it's almost like you didn't even realize the little areas where you were still treating someone in the way that you might expect them to act based on your own bias or what you were hoping for. And there's just such a kind of freedom in seeing someone so clearly that their behaviors don't become a reflection of you, their opinion of you. And it's just kind of, you can see them as individuals and work with that, which is amazing.
Yes.
And I will say one more thing, and then we're going to dive into you.
Yeah.
The freedom that comes when you're willing to have difficult conversations, but having your, the way that you,
that framework.
Like describe it and explain it. Like as a lifelong people pleaser, right? Who has adapted the way that I do life to make other people happy so that they like me, right? I'm a projector. And so, but I was so validated by learning more about what it is to be a projector that I was able to communicate to Siri and really own like how I am, who I am, what I need, and let go of like what that meant. Let go of let go of, her potential disappointment in me or whatever it is, right? And we were able to work through that. And now it's like the freedom to own who you are and not apologize and not adapt is like, it's priceless. Yeah. It's priceless.
And the freedom then that Siri has to not feel pressure to pick up all the slack in all the areas that like, the generator then wants to have to do, right? I think that just even also your acknowledgement of that as the projector in the relationship, because this obviously mimics me and my husband, is I think the best kind of discussion and conversation that you can have to set yourselves up to really play to each other's strengths, right? And also acknowledge like there are going to be some gaps if we're both living our design, and that's okay. Like we can fill those in other ways rather than one of us having to compromise on who we are and what we do best.
Yes. To everything.
Amen. Like, be true to you, period. Be true to you, period. And then you have a friend or a partner or a romantic, whatever, and you're like, here's the deal. This is who I am. I'm very clear about who I am. If you're cool with this, right? Great. If not, that's okay too. But I'm not going to
abandon myself.
And abandon myself.
Yeah.
Right. So Anyway, okay, let's dive in because I want to get some.
I know, we got to get to Alexandra. Alexandra is a former corporate consultant turned human design coach. After a decade of helping Fortune 500s identify and articulate their why, she pivoted to help individuals, families, and couples do the same. She uses human design as a tool to help her clients pursue their purpose with more clarity and confidence. Alexandra is passionate about translating insights from her clients' human design charts into actionable strategies for optimizing their relationships, their well-being, careers, finances, and family life. Alexandra was born in London, raised in Amsterdam, educated at Princeton University, now lives in Santa Barbara, California with her husband and 2-year-old son. Can I say that you're from?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm ready to pop. So, yeah.
She's pregnant. We're excited. She's pregnant. She's pregnant. Becoming a mother inspired her to create Thriving by Design, a collection of tools, cheat sheets, and online courses designed to give parents insight into their child's unique sensitivities, preferences, and gifts, as well as tactical tips for how to support them. Alexandra is happiest when moving her body, eating good food, exploring new places, and in deep conversation with new or old friends. I just have I have whole body chills again, just talking about, like, I love reading your about. Last time I wanted to ask you this and we didn't have time because we were doing the reading. I'm so curious about being born in London and then raised in Amsterdam. Can you just share with us what that was like for you?
Ooh, wow, we're going way back. So yes, so my parents, both of them were actually Dutch. However, my mom had never lived in Holland. So my dad was in London for a few years, opening an art gallery. His family's in art. They met, fell in love, and had all 3 of us kids there. And then when I was around 5 or 6, we moved to the Netherlands because he took over the main gallery there. And I would say, so I love that I've had those different international experiences because I really think that creates kind of an adaptability, maybe is the best word to use, that I've found very valuable, especially then in the move from the Netherlands to the United States. Mm-hmm. The thing that had the biggest impression on me, I think, just reflecting back on looking at who I am today, is kind of the Dutch coming into the Dutch culture and the Dutch mentality as an outsider. So being able to look at it with a sense of objectivity and kind of notice the stuff that I love, the stuff that I didn't, because the Dutch are amazing, amazing people. If you've ever met a Dutch person, like I get the most compliments. Whenever I say that I'm Dutch, there's someone who's like, oh my God, I have this friend and I love them. They're the best. But they are very direct. Mm-hmm. They are very down to earth to the point that it is not a good thing to stand out in any way. It's very conformist, just like in terms of like the culture itself. And as a Leo sun, that was not me. I literally wanted to be on every stage that I saw, and was like musical theater child through and through.
Oh my God.
Then around the age of like 12, 13, I decided I want to study in the United States. So I start, doing all the SAT prep and all of this, which was also, no one even knew what that was at the time.
Okay.
And then I go to the US, which was also so out of the ordinary.
How old were you?
Holland, only when I went for college. So at 18.
Okay.
Wow.
But choosing a different path in Holland is a lot more challenging and not as celebrated as it is here. Like here, this country is just, by nature of the American dream, a lot more encouraging when it comes to kind of, ambition and living your dreams and standing
being
out.
An entrepreneur. Yeah.
I mean, just the fact when I had to write my college essay, I think the first draft that I wrote, and at the time I had someone who was kind of helping me prep for that, they read it and they were like, Alexandra, you have to understand, like, this is about showcasing yourself and actually, getting them to be impressed, because I'd written something that was like so humble to the point that it was like, no one would accept you to their school, So, and that was just because of like the Dutch kind of mentality. And so now I think it's something that actually is a strength because it keeps you humble and it keeps you very down to earth in a society where it's easy to get maybe carried away. And so I'd say like that's the biggest takeaway if I reflect back on it. But then growing up in the Netherlands is the best thing ever. You have so much freedom. Looking at my son, I'm like, oh, I wish I could give you that. I wish you could bike everywhere and have that level of independence by the age of, 6, as opposed to having to have your parents drive you to everything. I wish you could kind of, explore and experiment more as a teenager without it being either heavily judged or illegal, right? Like there's so many things that I feel like are amazing about growing up in a culture that is a little bit more free and open. And as a parent, I'm almost like more and more grateful for it now, like reflecting back.
It's so interesting because you said they're very conformist and humble and grounded, but then you also are sharing about, which my perception was just that freedom. So those are interesting.
Yeah, but they can go hand in hand.
Okay.
I think they go hand in hand. It's a freedom to experiment and explore, I think, without judgment. But the conformist piece is more like don't be too out there. Don't be too different. Don't keep both feet firmly planted on the ground, because as soon as you try to be too much of an individual, that triggers people. And they're like, you're not, don't think you're better than everyone else. That's very
let's be free, but together. We'll be free, but we'll do it together as like a tribe. In our tribe, safely.
Yes.
Got it.
That's really fascinating because, as a matter of fact, one of the things that Siri and I were talking about before you came on, and one of the questions that I was really excited to dive into with you, and it's even more interesting to me now, having listened to what you just said. So we know you through Kathy Heller, and you have worked with Kathy, you have coached her, you have been of service to her using your expertise. And I was just listening to a podcast, Kate Northrup and Tracy Litt. And what was coming through for me was, women like you and like Kathy and like Tracy and Kate, there's something that happens where you do give yourself permission to step into that space of owning your expertise, your authority, your individuality, right? And because we all have that, like, oh, I know that I could be there. I know that's me, but we have beliefs that hold us back. And in your case, a big belief coming from your conditioning where you don't dare, right, stand out and own that. So I would love to hear for you. I know that's a big question, but what was that process for you, and how did you bust through that limiting belief that allowed you to say, no, I am this. I'm going to own this.
I feel like I'm still a work in progress, but I think human design had a huge role to play in this, because as a child, right, as I said, I had no problem standing out and being in the limelight. And then you start to pick up on, some subliminal messaging from your environment where, friends or friends' parents would make comments that kind of made me feel like I needed to shut that down or dampen it a little bit.
Totally.
So fast forward, what's funny is when I came to the States and went to college here, and I took the athlete path. So I actually didn't even do any musical theater. The people who got to know me then would not recognize me as a child, right? They would, because I was very much kind of like, okay, I'm just going to stay in my lane, do my thing. I think because of all of that conditioning pressure to not be too out there, not stand out. So fast forward, I did all the things by the book. I graduated college and took a job in management consulting because that's what everyone did at the time. My plan was to do that for 2-3 years, go to business school, come back. I literally was walking the yellow brick road that was laid out for me by I guess, society, what I thought other people expected and so forth.
And you're
And
in a
it
different
wasn't-
country too.
I'm
So
in a
it's
different
like
country.
there's even more kind of pressure. Like I need to fit in so I'm not ostracized from this country.
Yes, exactly. And so I do that, and then I discover human design, and it started to, like, again, human design, I'm hoping, I'm not going to give a background on it, but it basically gives you on in black and white on a piece of paper, like, this is your most authentic self and way of being and expressing and sharing and contributing.
How did you come
And
across human design? How did it find you?
I ended up, so while I was in this kind of first career, 3 years in, let's say, one of my closest friends started building a company and coming to me for advice. And I would help her brainstorm. And we'd like meet before I went to work. We'd meet late night after I went to work in like these random little cafes and bars in New York City. And it was lighting me up so much that when she asked, like, hey, would you be open to leaving your job and co-founding this with me? I felt this like full body yes. It was like a yes. And there wasn't a part of me that was hesitating or worried about what other people would think. And just like I leaped, I jumped, I did it. And looking back, I had this moment of why the heck was that so easy for me? Like I've been literally doing what other people expected me to do for so many years. Why now? Why this? Like how, what was that? So it sent me on this kind of self-development path, and I read all the books, did all the things. And one of the tools I discovered was human design. And it kind of was like the missing puzzle piece, as I call it, especially around this, because it taught me I was a generator and that I'm very much meant to make decisions based on that like sacral hell yes. And it's not something that makes any sense to the mind. And it didn't, right? Like with this company, we had no track record. We had no investment. We had like no clients, nothing. And I was like, yep, I'm in. And so that was really for me, I think why I loved human design so much is it kind of explained that. And then it kind of sent me down this like deep rabbit hole. But one of the things too in this that I discovered was that I was holding back so much. I was literally showing the world this like filtered version of me, a version that I thought other people wanted to see. And so when I started doing human design on the side, it felt very scary at first because it was this woo-woo thing. And I had like built my reputation on being this very practical, logical person. And so I kept it very secret. I would never tell any of my like, colleagues or even like my friends from college what I was doing. And
you were
then
in the closet.
I was like in the closet. And then when I showed up on Instagram, I'm like trying to do it in the way that I see other people doing human design. So I was like, it just wasn't authentic.
Okay.
And there was a moment where I realized like, no, if you're going to do this, you have to walk the talk. You have to show up in the most you way possible. And I took a step back. And for me, that meant I'm going to approach this very kind of ethereal, spiritual woo-woo tool in a very practical way, because my gift is breaking things down and making them digestible. And that's what I'm going to do. And after making that decision, it became so much easier to just own the space that I was in, because it felt so much more aligned and embodied per the name of this podcast, because it was the first time I was just so solidly and authentically me and not trying to be who I thought other people needed, expected, or wanted me to be.
And then you started getting validation for that. And so then that like
off.
Built the confidence to just keep going in that direction. And you honestly, feel like that authenticity is the magic sauce for you?
Yes. And honestly, I didn't care. I think that's the thing I realized too. The people who were turned off by that, I didn't care about them. I'm like, well, then you're not meant to be in my life anyway. And it was this like talking about freedom, right? I just realized it's not worth it to compromise on your own authority and belief systems and who you are in order to please like, someone else out there. And as soon as I stopped caring about that, like everything kind of fell into place and took off. And I still don't love being the center of attention. And it's taken me a long time to get comfortable on Instagram, like actually having my face on Instagram. But it's getting easier the more I also just, trust that the right people are finding me for a reason.
Amber, earlier you were
Oh, I love
talking
that.
about the word imposter syndrome, and I'm just curious to like keep following up on this question, how you dealt with that, how you deal with that.
I truly think, well, one, I feel like I have a really solid foundation of knowledge in human design. Like I do feel like I know my stuff, and that helps a lot. And I always preface it by saying this is my interpretation, right? Like there is a degree of faith that people have to have if they're going to listen to me or trust a tool like this. On top of that, I now have years and years of running these mini experiments where I'm seeing the things play out in real time. So to me, I have the data. And for me, imposter syndrome only shows up when I don't feel like I have that foundation, when I'm kind of like speaking on something where I don't feel like I have done the work to either trust myself or trust the system enough. That's one. Two, again, to me, as long as you are showing up in the most kind of authentic, true way, I truly don't care if it resonates or not. And I think that's for me the recipe to solve imposter syndrome, because imposter syndrome comes from like you're trying to live up to something, right? And you're afraid that you won't in some way, or that you're not worthy of people's attention. But if you believe that that's not your job to determine that worthiness. Your only job is to literally show up and share your gifts in the most authentic and true way you possibly can. And whether that lands or not, unfortunately, is out of our control.
Okay, let me see if I can put this into words, because I'm so excited about this conversation. And I know we have to wrap things up in a little while, but it's like, so I had an experience at 12, like you, musical theater, got the lead 2 years in a row. Somebody's mom complained. All of a sudden it's like, ooh,
Contraction.
people don't like it when you show up in that way, right? So then, like you, right, we spend our entire life trying to avoid that kind of judgment, that kind of criticism, that kind of ostracization.
Ostracized.
Yeah.
And we live with this boogeyman that if I'm true to myself, like there's this horrible thing to be afraid of, right? That's how we live our entire life. And then all of a sudden we get to this place in our life where we're like, well, this isn't working. This adapting to fit in, this morphing to be a version of myself so that people like me, this is not cutting it. And so we take the steps to start to come into what authentic alignment feels like, looks like for each of us. And then all of a sudden, it's like, well, this was fucking way better than the shit I've been doing my whole life. Like, I was afraid all these years. I would way rather have this and have some people not like it than live, like denying the truth of who I am. This is way better. But most of us have to go through that, right? What do you want to teach your children? And do you think it's possible to avoid that? like I want to teach my children, God, just be true to who you are from day one. Like, don't ever compromise that. And I hope that by me modeling that it will give them that permission. But what's your opinion about that? Your feeling about that?
100%. I think that is the greatest gift you can give your children is, one, being the most authentic version of you, so modeling it, and two, creating a safe space for them to figure out what that is for themselves and then live that. Yeah. And again, that's why I'm so passionate about sharing something like human design with parents in particular, because so much of kind of the early conditioning that happens and kind of creates these limiting beliefs and these patterns that haunt us forever are formed in the household unintentionally, right? Because this parent, you're all you want is the best for your child, right? And so anything you do typically for the vast majority of us parents is going to come from that place of love and wanting to set them up for success. But we live in a world where people are very, very fearful of being something outside of the norm. And so as parents, we think, oh, we're going to make our child's life easier if we try and push them in this direction, right?
Yeah.
Or if we regurgitate the advice that has been given to us or that we see other parents give their kids. And we're doing children such a disservice with that, and ourselves ultimately. So yes, for me, it is kind of letting my kid lead a lot of the time, to the point that I'm sure I get so many strange looks of like, why is your child wearing a Santa Claus outfit in July with no shoes on? And we're like out in public. But honestly, so much of this is just teaching him that it is okay to be himself in like all facets and ways. And if that means he's going to bump up, encounter some resistance, great. I want him to feel confident enough in himself and trust himself enough to navigate that. And I will be here to guide him, but I don't want to prevent that from happening, because to me, that creates a more resilient kid ultimately. And it starts by you modeling it and creating a really safe space for them to kind of be themselves and be super aware. Because of course, I also catch myself saying things that I'm like, oh, is that really necessary? Is that really my voice? Or was that like my parents' voice or the parenting podcast I just listened to?
Yes.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's a good discernment. I'm just curious, Alexandra, what do you feel like after all the years of human design, do you wish that you had in your heart or in your knowledge as a child? I mean, this is sort of following up on what you're just talking about.
Such a good point. I'm trying to think back, because I know that one of the other kind of questions that you all had posed was, what is an experience that changed you? And one of my earliest experiences was losing my mom when I was like 10 and a half, I want to say.
Wow.
And that was, for me, a moment where I think what happened, again, reflecting back on it, is I felt so much responsibility. And now through the eyes of human design, I know why, because I have a 5-1 profile, and my tendency is to kind of play the savior role, to kind of step in, solve everyone else's problems, hide my own vulnerability, shut that down, right? And not need other people to, or basically, I want other people to rely on me, and I don't want to rely on anyone else. So I did that, which forced me as a 10-year-old girl to step into this very masculine space and role. Whereas up until that moment, I think I was, if I think about the musical theater and the stage, and I was like the girliest girl you could find. But that was a massive shift for me. And what followed was 8 years of not shedding a single tear, because I had shut that down. And in human design, my primary kind of inner compass is my emotions. I'm an emotional decision maker, right? So that I think is what made it so hard for me to trust myself and to be my true self, because I had shut such an essential part of me down. So I think, like, looking back, the biggest thing I would tell myself is like, it's okay to be vulnerable. Your emotions are one of the most valuable sources of information that you can, listen and attune to. And I think that would have prevented a lot of the insecurity or the lack of trust or the time that it took me to kind of come back to myself.
Right. But that makes
Wow.
so much sense that was your coping mechanism. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
And everyone goes to different things, right? I did a little post on grief, and it was about the profile, because you can learn so much about kind of how you approach grief through the lens of that profile. Like, what is your default coping mechanism? And it was so healing for me to write that, because I realized like that's exactly what I did. And this is also the magic. It's like there was nothing wrong with it per se. It makes complete sense that that's what I gravitated towards. But I wish I had had someone, or just, if I knew about this tool to help me be aware of what was happening and undo that conditioning a little bit.
Yeah. I feel like that about breath work. Like, I wish that my younger self had breath work, had that nervous system regulation, just ways to ground, ways to rely on myself, ways to not seek outside of myself. Yeah.
Yes, that's it. That's what all these practices do ultimately, right? They make you your own guru, your own healer.
For sure. I think like, particularly with human design, if I would have had somebody who had an understanding of what human design was, and would have been able to say to me, listen, honey, here's the deal. You're a projector. So you're going to feel different because you are, because the population, right? Like there's only like, you're a smaller population, a part of the population. And so it's going to be normal that you're going to feel this way. And there's nothing wrong with you. And I mean, God, like the pain that I feel like I could have avoided, just understanding myself.
Yeah.
And
right?
being at peace with that.
Yes.
I mean, this is, if I look at my son, right, one of the things in his chart that I can already see is that the way he learns will not fit the mold of the current education system. Let's put it that way.
Yes.
Right. He is very much, he's always taking in the entire environment. So he has a hard time focusing.
Yep.
A lot of the times when I'm talking to him, it's as if he's not listening. I know, because I know his design, he's taking it all in. And 5 minutes later, he'll come to me with an answer. But if I didn't have that way of understanding him, I would probably sit there and say, Leo, look at me. Leo, look at me. And if he didn't do that, I'd come up with some type of punishment. I'm turning the TV off or whatever it is.
Right.
And understanding that, no, this is just the way he processes. And, the best way to cope with this or just to manage it as a parent, is to ask him the question, give him the time to process, and then come to me when he's ready. All I need to do is wait an extra 5 minutes. Like, it's not a big deal, right? That just gives me so much more confidence as a parent, and creates such a safe space for him, again, to be himself, rather than to force himself to focus, or to feel like, per your point, as a projector, like he's not doing it right. He's doing something wrong. He's not smart enough. He can't operate in the way that everyone else is operating.
Yeah.
And I hope we can learn to celebrate those who don't fit these molds more, now that we're understanding all the many ways to be a human, and to be good, to be a successful, effective human.
When I read to my 10-year-old Phoenix about being a generator, he literally like got up in my face and was like this. He was like, see? He threw his arms up in the air and he was like, this, like, yes, mommy, like, oh my God, you finally see me, you understand. Like, I read him the kid's profile and he was just like, yes, because he's just what you're describing. Not that I don't know that that's like technically a generator thing, but like he needs so much time to process.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. And I'll be like, hello. And he's like,
yeah. And also even little things like, as a generator, he's wired to want to invest his time and energy in things that excite him. Right.
Yes.
So let's say he's working on something really fun. He's like drawing and he's so lit up by it. And you ask him to go in a bath. Obviously, that's not as exciting. So obviously his like natural generator tendency is to ignore that, or to not want to do it. And so here's where having this understanding as a parent can help, because okay, this kid is wired to want to do what excites him. So how can I make the bath as exciting as freaking possible for him, right? Like, so then you can start to be creative and be like, hey, let's take a bath. I got these amazing like bath bombs, bath markers, or I created a whole spa situation for you up there. The candles are on, the music is lit, right? I mean, suddenly
Disco
it
ball.
becomes a much more appealing alternative. And yeah, and the kid's like, yes, mom, I want to take that bath. Forget this coloring. So it's like working with them
Yeah.
instead of getting annoyed or frustrated by them just like living their true design. Like that is who they are. And we're unknowingly trying to manipulate that as parents so much of the time, which is sad.
Yeah, we're just in our programs. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so I would like to talk to you for at least another hour, but I also want to honor your time. And so are there any other things that you would like to share? I know that you know some of the questions that we like to ask, and we didn't necessarily get to all of them, but I want to just give you the space to say anything or share anything else before we wrap up that we didn't get to cover.
Oh man.
Or stay on for another hour.
Yeah, it's up to you. Whatever.
I get to choose. Great. I mean, I think when, a lot of questions revolve around this idea of being embodied. And to me, being embodied really is having your actions and behaviors on the outside reflect like who you truly are on the inside without that process of it being filtered or you making compromises. And it's interesting because when reflecting on, okay, what allows me to do that, it really comes down to self-care and filling my own cup. And I, especially in working with parents, but I think especially in working with women in general, we tend to make ourselves this martyr, and we tend to use our dependence and our roles and responsibilities as excuses to deprioritize that, right?
Yep.
And like the main message I want to get across to everyone is like, you are so much more valuable to all of those people who depend on you when you put yourself first, when you make sure your cup is filled.
Yeah.
That makes everything easier. So stop using your kids, your husband, your job, right, as an excuse for not, taking the walk, getting the babysitter for a date night, signing up for a particular course, investing in yourself in some way, shape, or form. That actually needs to come first, not last.
Yes.
And the only thing you owe anyone in this lifetime is becoming that most embodied, authentic version of you. That is where you will naturally live out your purpose and share your gifts in the most effective way. Like you won't even have to work for it. It's not something that you have to intentionally do at that point. But the only way you're going to get there is by like listening to your body and giving it what it needs first and foremost.
Preach.
Preach it.
Music.
That is so good. It's so good. It's so good. And I believe that with every fiber of my being. And there are people who think that is selfish. And so it is just so beautiful to hear you say that and just to affirm that is truth. That is truth. And it is a new way, right? It is a new way of being a mother and being a woman.
Yes.
And I think that means it's our responsibility as women who see that and get that to celebrate when we see other people doing it and to celebrate when we're doing it. Like call it out and cheer them on, because you have no idea how impactful that is if you see a mom of 3 in a yoga class and you let her know, oh my gosh, I'm so impressed and excited for you that you are here. Good for you. Way to go.
Yeah.
Instead of, staying silent in that moment, which would be the easy thing to do, even though you're thinking all of those things in your head. Like the more that we can kind of encourage each other to set a new standard for motherhood and just womanhood, I think in general, the easier it's going to, the more of a like flywheel effect we're going to create.
Thank you. That's the highlight right there for me. I just listen to that all day. Oh my gosh.
All day. all day. You're amazing.
The
You're
amount
good.
of the amount of body tingles that I get when you talk is crazy.
Makes me so happy. I just feel so happy.
Ah.
So you've got another one on the way. When's your due date? You're soon.
Early mid-March. It keeps changing in
Okay.
every appointment, but I'm hoping for a little Pisces girl. We'll see.
Oh, so exciting.
We need some mellow energy in this household because we've got 2 Leos and a Scorpio. And so
Oh yeah.
yeah. We need a little wise, mellow lady to kind of help balance it out.
Round. Oh
That
my
makes
gosh.
sense.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Alexandra, Siri and I love you and we appreciate you and you are so valuable and you're such a gift. And thank you so much for spending this time with us and sharing all of your wisdom and all of your experience. It's magic.
Oh, well, thank you so much for having me and for both just kind of walking the talk and living your most embodied life, which I think comes through in all your episodes, the guests that you choose to work with, and also how you are constantly evolving yourselves and sharing that as you go, right? I think that's also something that people don't do enough and is so refreshing and helpful and inspiring too for all of us. So thank you.
Thank you
Thank
for that.
you.
Thank you so much. This
Ah,
was so special.
all right. Well, we will see you on the other side once you're a mother of 2. We will find each other again. we were both mothers of 2. So
Yes.
we know
We're
mine
here.
are 9 and 11, right? So we know. We got you.
Okay.
We're
Reach
here.
out.
Okay. I will. Oh, I will. I'll meet the tribe.
Okay. All right.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Oh, I love her.
God, it makes me happy to do this. It just makes me so happy to have these conversations.
Thank you for guiding it so well. I felt so easeful between the two of you. I was just like, woo, I'm just riding this container.
Oh.
Just riding the container. It felt really good.
Oh, good.
Felt really good. Oh, I do get so many head chills and body chills when she's talking, especially that last 5 minutes of the conversation. My whole head was just ding, 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 like, boo. Yeah. Fireworks.
It's so good. It's so good. It's such an important conversation because like
Yes. It's everything.
It's everything, right? I meet women. Like I just had a conversation yesterday with a new coaching client.
Cool.
And it's funny, like I'll have these conversations with these women, right? And they're in tears because they are at the beginning of their journey. And I'm so excited because what I see is possibility. Right?
Yeah.
They're feeling scared or overwhelmed or you know what I mean? Which I totally understand. But what I'm seeing is possibility and an invitation and an entrance into a whole new world. Right.
And that's why they want to work with you, because they can feel that you see that for them. Yeah.
Right. But like what Alexandra said, right, is this notion that we are the most valuable to everyone in our life when we are living our most authentic life, period.
Yeah. And when you said, something about other people not seeing it as the right way, quotes, right way.
Right.
I was also thinking about the conditioning and how much I gaslight myself. Like those voices are not even there. I've internalized all of it. So it's all inside of me that I'm saying, no, you shouldn't do this. You didn't earn it. You didn't earn the nap. You didn't earn the massage. You didn't earn the vacation. You didn't, it's internalized. Yeah. At this point in my life, it's no one else is saying don't do that. Right. Like I think that conditioning is so seeped in. It's baked in.
Oh, absolutely. And it takes, and this is what I was saying to her yesterday, it takes a willingness to take action in the face of those voices, right? Like I'm going to take the vacation anyways.
Yeah.
I'm going to get the massage anyways. And then what happens is, like you just had the experience of with taking a vacation, a short vacation, but
Yep.
it was a big deal, right? To give yourself permission to have that. But who you become after saying yes to the vacation, after saying yes to the massage, after saying yes to the thing that you think you don't deserve, who you become, you're like, I'll be darned. I guess I am a better version of myself now for the other people in my life. So
That's right.
I guess that's a lie that I've been telling myself.
Yeah, because we used to only be able to take one night, and now we had 2 nights, and it was like I came back and the breath work room was full, and people were ready, and I was ready, and I was full, and it was like,
wow,
everything just felt better. And so the kids feel better. They got a break, right?
And they had so much fun with your dad, right? Like
and like the feeling that Jake and I have after taking the time, if we miss, I love that she talked about date night, because if we miss a date night 1 week, I feel it like a day later. I am like, we did not take that date night. Yeah. I feel it. Well, the stress, the disconnection,
Yes. I got to have a date night with myself. So whether you're single,
that too,
or in a relationship, having a date night can look like whatever it looks like, but it's something that nourishes you and feeds you. And whether it's your relationship with a partner or with yourself, right? Yeah. If I don't have that date night with myself, for example, I feel it, and I'm not as good of a mom.
Yeah, your artist, Julia Cameron says the artist date. Like, you got to take yourself out for an artist date.
Yeah, for sure.
I did a head massage.
I noticed I went like this. I was like, oh, my pits are so sweaty. I get so excited.
I am soaking. Okay.
I'm soaking. Oh my God. This is why being at home on Zoom is so good, because you can, unless you decide to raise your arms up in the air.
Well, we're both very natural. We don't use like chemical deodorants, right? So
I don't even wear deodorant.
I know.
Except for occasionally if I'm, going to be with somebody else.
Because you smell like you just smell like sunshine and roses
like
without it
all the time. No, I do not.
We're gonna edit this.
I do use it's a natural deodorant that smells really lovely. So if I'm going to be like close to somebody, I will use that. Okay.
Thanks for listening. We are so appreciative of Alexandra's time today. She's such a gift, and it was such an honor to like understand her better. Yeah. I love her. Thanks, guys. We'll see you next time. Bye. Be your most authentic self today. That's the message.